Hey everybody, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it. I'm so glad you're here. And before we get started, I just wanted to share something that's a little bit different. I'm going to introduce someone here who's with me here in the studio. And I just want to make sure that I'm clear about who's with me because I might have to step away for a second during the interview. We'll see. But I just want to introduce you to a friend of mine. Come here, lady. So this is Lady. About an hour ago, I did a short video just introducing you all to her, if anyone is watching that. But she is brand new to my world. Just picked her up yesterday, and the kids will meet her tonight. Very excited. But this is the first time I've had a dog while doing an interview. So please bear with me if for some reason she is chewing on Christmas lights or something. I may need to step away for a minute, but she's got her 2 toys. But I just want to let you know, this is little Lady. She is the newest member of the Harmonic Atheist family, and she's so excited to see you. And with that, we'll get started. So thank you so much for being a part of my family. And as I like to mention whenever I start the interviews, if you all would like to share your story with me, please reach out. All the ways to connect with me are beneath this video. And with that in mind, I'm going to bring in our guest today. Today we're speaking with Kylee Summers. Kylee, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. I'm going to start with a quick bio and then we'll kick it off. And Kylee was born in Salt Lake City, Utah, that's really cool. That's the heart of Mormonism, as we all know. But she grew up in Colorado, and she started writing stories when she was 9 and never stopped. That's so cool. She earned a bachelor's in English from the University of Colorado in Denver. She's published 2 mysteries under the name Kylee a Witch, and her first as well in a series of romances under the name Kylee Summers. I've got the links for those beneath this video if you want to check them out on Amazon. She was a drummer in a girl band in high school, and she still plays sometimes. She met her husband in math class in their junior year of high school. So that's amazing. Most people can't have that claim to fame. And she's a mom to 2 boys. Again, she grew up Mormon, but in her late 20s, she made the decision to leave, and we'll talk through that, I'm sure, very shortly. I do have some other links beneath the video. She has a website, KylieTheWriter.com. You can also follow her on Instagram at kylie.summers.author. And with that in mind, Kylee, tell us more about yourself and some fun things.
Yeah, thanks for having me. So I have 2 boys. I'm a boy mom, but I'm not like one of those crazy ones. And I have to learn about their special interests. And before, it was like the geologic time periods, like the Pliocene, Miocene, and they were like, what animal evolved during that period? But now it's sports, which I'm way more out of my depth with the sports. And so I'm having to learn how to spell all these players' names and what their rivalries are. And
are there any particular sports that they like more? That is like a baseball, or is it all sports?
Ooh, it's all sports right now. World Cup's pretty big. But we took him to a baseball game, so it was baseball for a couple weeks, and then I'm sure it's going to be football in a couple months.
Very nice, very nice. My kids are all into Pokemon. I know more about Mega Charizard than I would have ever imagined. But anyway.
Fun.
And what is it like living where you have lived in Colorado and Denver and so forth? And what you're still there in Denver?
Yeah. Okay. I'm a little north of Denver.
I thought so. What's it like living there? Do you like it?
Oh, I love it. We're in a drought right now, so that sucks. But and we have 0 humidity. So whenever I travel, I'm just like, what is this? Very confused.
How close are you to like the Rocky Mountains?
Yeah, I'm about an hour from there, and then I'm about 45 minutes from Boulder. So
very nice.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Oh, cool. Well, we're so glad you're here. Again, we'll encourage everyone to go check out your links as we're talking, but we'll bring those back to our attention later as well. But we'd love to hear your story. If you could take us back to the earliest days, what was it like growing up? What did you hear about the Bible and about Jesus? I know Mormonism is a different animal than the version of Christianity I grew up in, so I'll have some questions about the distinctives, but we'd just love to hear how it went.
Yeah. So my parents were pretty like orthodox in their beliefs. So we were going to church every Sunday. Growing up, it was 3 hours every Sunday, which was rough as a kid. But
was that all preaching, by the way? Like just 3 hours of preaching, or was that like some Sunday school time too?
No. So they do like 1 hour of like a preaching sermon thing. One thing about Mormonism is they don't have like a pastor who has gone to school and learned how to be a pastor. It's all volunteer based. And so your equivalent of a pastor is like a bishop. And it's just Joe Schmo off the street that they believe was called by God and is in charge of the congregation for about 5 to 7 years. And then it switches up. And then every Sunday, the members of the congregation are giving the sermons. So you are in for, it's very Russian roulette. You have no idea what's going to come from the pulpit that week. And sometimes it's really uplifting, but sometimes it's conspiracy theories from the pulpit the whole time. So
do they, I'll probably ask this again later in a different way, but just since we're on the topic, do they have a hierarchy that's tight enough that if somebody was kind of talking some fringe stuff, that would trickle up and the hierarchy would say, hey, shut that down. You've got some freedom, but we've got some lanes you got to stay in.
Yes. So the bishop is on the stand all the time, and he actually has a button. He can turn the mic off. So if it's getting really bad, the bishop will step in. I have never seen a bishop step in. It's never gotten quite bad enough. I know friends have, especially if they were saying stuff against their teachings on like the LGBTQ community, which is just sad because I didn't agree with those teachings in the first place, but they're more on top of those.
It's funny that you mentioned the whole idea, almost like a free-for-all. You don't know what you're going to get. When I was in Bible college studying to be a pastor, we had to go to like 10 or 12 different kinds of denominations, and just we could pick them. Just like they had to be very different from what we're used to, just for exposure.
Yeah.
And one week I went to a Quaker church, and that was so different. You literally, like anybody, there's no real preacher. Like anybody just stands up, and so you could have someone that just smoked 10 packs of some weed or something, and they just decided they just want to tell you about the purple elephants in the wall. Everyone has to stay quiet and just let them talk. It's crazy.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Okay. I wouldn't have thought that from the Quakers. Okay.
Yeah. So your parents were devoted to it. What were some of the messages that you heard in terms of the core ideologies of their doctrine?
Yeah. When I think about it, their core doctrine is that families can be together forever. And that's like how they get people in. It's their central messaging. They're like, you can be together with your family after death if you follow life our way. And so we would sing a lot of songs about that. We'd also sing songs about going to the temple, which you can't be together with your family unless you stay on the path and go to the temple and partake in the ordinances of the temple. They also we would sing songs about being children of God, stuff like that. But it's so funny. Like I talked to my friends from other denominations, and they definitely learned a lot more about Jesus at their church than I feel I did growing up Mormon, just because we had to learn about the Book of Mormon, and we had to learn about the history of Joseph Smith and the pioneers. And so we weren't spending, we were only spending like 50% of our time in the Bible, and the rest was in the Book of Mormon and then Joseph Smith.
In terms of the churches, you mentioned the different denominations, but did you go back much or at all to the main temple in Salt Lake City? And is that like a thing that people feel like they have to kind of do that pilgrimage at least once a year or whatever?
Yeah, so they have temples everywhere. There's 2 in Colorado, there's a billion in Utah, but there's at least one in most states, and then throughout the world. So you can go to the one that's closest to you. I did my husband and I made a special trip to go to Salt Lake City to go to that temple. It was beautiful inside, and they used to. So the ceremonies in the temples are done via movie. Like you have to watch a movie, but in Salt Lake, they used to have live actors. And it was a really cool experience to see the live actors, but they've since gotten rid of that. So I feel bad for people who don't get to experience it. It's really fun. Interesting.
Now, one of the things that makes a lot of difference to us as evangelicals is the idea that the big question is heaven or hell, and are you at peace with God? You mentioned more the idea of the eternal family. Do Mormons threaten people with if you don't do it our way, hell is to pay? Like, what is the main message in terms of the carrot and the stick? What are they threatening you with, and what are they offering besides, heaven and eternity with your family?
Yeah, so they have 3 levels of heaven, and then each of those levels has 3 levels within them. And so you are trying to get to the celestial kingdom, which is the top level of heaven. And if you're in that one, then you get to be with God and Jesus. But if you're in one of the lesser kingdoms, you can't see the people who are in the higher kingdom, so they have to come visit you. And then if you're in one of the lesser kingdoms, you're going to be like a servant angel for eternity. But that's also one of their selling points is they're like, we don't have heaven or hell. Like, God is all loving and he's going to meet people where they're at. And so like people who were Christian and were good people will probably get to like the middle level of heaven, and they'll still have a good existence. But if they had been Mormon and got the full truth, then they could have been in the highest level.
Right. That's where the good ice cream is.
Yes.
In terms of you're connecting with that, how deep did you go in terms of you fully believing all that and fully living to get to the higher levels and to be, in a sense, close to God and to whatever other celestial awards were waiting for you?
Yeah, so as a kid, I definitely had a harder time like buying in to the religion than like my siblings did. Um, like you get, excuse me, you get baptized when you're 8, and everyone will be like, you made the choice. You did such a good job. I'm so proud of you for choosing this. And I was like, I didn't choose this. Like, you guys scheduled the date, you scheduled my interview, and it was expected of me. And then I had a lot of questions, and I never liked reading my scriptures. I wanted to read fantasy instead. And it wasn't until I met my husband in junior year of high school, and then he was going through his Catholic confirmation.
Right.
And he is like a philosopher, like he got his degree in philosophy. He's very critical thinker, likes to pull things apart, arguments like that. And so as he was doing that, he wasn't quite fully buying into the Catholic confirmation. And so I was like, hey, this is what I believe. And Mormons believe that, the Book of Mormon was written by some Israelites who sailed across the ocean to the Americas and had their society there, and it's their record and history of it. And they're like, it could be the people from Guatemala, it could be the people from Mexico, we don't know, but it's the ancient Americans. And so there's a passage where Christ comes and visits the Americas after he's crucified in those like 3 days before he's resurrected. And he comes and preaches and teaches to everyone. And so, my husband is Mexican, and I was like, hey, like, here's a history of your people. Like, here's Christ came and visited the Americas, and like, he loved that. And we were reading the passage about Christ visiting them, and I just felt I got the shivers, I got the chills, I felt the spirit, as I would have called it. And I was like, this is true. Like, Christ loves everyone, and he wasn't only in Jerusalem. He cared about everyone all over the world. And like, so that's really when I bought in, like fully bought in, was after I had that feeling of, I'd never felt the spirit so strongly. And so that's when I really bought into Jesus and Christ, and I was just learning about him and his teachings. And I was like ignoring the Book of Mormon at the time. I was more focused on Christ in my personal study. And dating my husband, I loved him, still do. And I wanted to be with him forever. And I was so scared of not having that. And so that's when I also got more into the faith, because I was like, I want to be with him forever. I want our kids to be with us forever. Yeah.
I'm just curious, just a quick sidetrack.
Yeah.
Side note here, you mentioned you met him in junior high. Was it, most people can't trace their love story, their marriage back to those early days. Was it love at first sight, or what was that like?
So I met him junior year of high school, and I am a planner, and I knew it was going to be prom that year, and I hadn't had a boyfriend before. And so I was like, I need to find a boyfriend this year so I can go to prom. And the first day of math class, I walked in, I'd never seen him before, and I sat behind him, and I was like, he is cute. I'm going to go to prom with him. And I started talking to him and got to know him, and I just kept falling, and I was like, dang it, like, I really like this guy. And so I overheard him talking with a friend about asking out another girl. And so I was like, I got to tell him, like, I'm not going to miss this opportunity. Like, I really like him. And I told him, and he friend zoned me, um, which I was like, dang it. And so I started talking to other guys and doing my own thing. And then he was like, wait a second. And then we became better friends. And then we started dating.
So he realized he was missing out. That's
Yes.
awesome. Very cool. So glad he realized that you all were a good fit. It's an amazing story. I was just going to say regarding one quick thought about the idea of Jesus coming to the Americas.
Yeah.
I knew a little bit about that, like just enough to know the just the big picture. But one of the things that was interesting is a sort of parallel. There was a lot of talk in the evangelical church a long time ago about the rapture. You know, that term.
Yes.
Jesus has come back at any point. And there was this guy that was a singer, I think back in the 60s or 70s, called Larry Norman. And he sang, he was kind of like probably the precursor to like Petra and Newsboys, that kind of stuff. But he has this one song called UFO, Unidentified Flying Object, meaning Jesus is the unidentified flying object. You're going to see him. And he talks about this to kind of talk about the rapture, but he also brings in the idea of other planets. And he says, I'll bet that if there's life on other planets, he's been there too and died for them too. And it just made me think it's like that Oprah meme, like, you know, you get a visit from Jesus and you get a visit from Jesus. We all, you know, he's probably visited China. He's probably visited South America or Antarctica and visited the penguins. Like everybody gets a visit from Jesus, not just ancient Judea. And it's just kind of funny how that works. But in terms of your big picture, though, like going back to your story, we talk about the idea of a relationship with God, a personal relationship with God. You're communing with him, you're seeking his will, of course, but you're also you're not seeking him to just direct you or give you good things and avoid bad things. You're actually seeking him. Like the prize is not something he can do for you. He is the prize. And you're trying, we would say the Bible is a love letter from God, and we want to get to know him and be known by him. Would Mormons talk like that? And like, what is a relationship with God look like practically for someone that's really serious?
Yeah, I love hearing that. I've never heard that statement before, that the Bible is a love letter from God. So yeah, we did not talk about God like that. It was more, I mean, we believed that the Godhead was 3 separate beings. And so you had to have a relationship with Jesus and God, or Heavenly Father, as we called him. And it was very like, I remember being taught, like, we need to pray daily and we need to communicate with God and not just come to him with our problems. We need to tell him about our joys, about everything going in our life. And there were a lot of metaphors about, like, what if you called your dad and you only complained to him? And it's a 2-way relationship. And we would be told, you know, after you pray, to be quiet and still so that you could get inspiration from God back, to have that kind of a relationship. And yeah, I mean, after I like fully bought in, I was praying all the time. I also, though, so I have OCD, and I didn't find this out till I was in my late 20s, and I would confuse intrusive thoughts with inspiration from God. And so we would always hear stories of like, oh, if you have the thought that you should bring so-and-so dinner, that's from God, because he knows that they're, you know, they have no food to eat, or they're having a really rough time, and God inspired you to bring them dinner. And so I would like panic a lot, because I would be like, who am I supposed to be helping? What am I supposed to do? And so if a random thought would pop in my head, I'd always be like, was this God? Was it me? Is it just me being anxious? And, you know, we're taught that not doing something is the same as another sin. So I was like, I'm sinning. I'm ignoring this inspiration from God. So it was really stressful. And I was always stressed of like, what is God going to ask me to do? When I had a really rough postpartum with my first kiddo. And so when I was pregnant with my second, I was in a really dark place. I didn't want to be alive. I didn't know how I was going to make it through this pregnancy. And my biggest fear was that I would get through this, and then God would tell me I had to have another baby. And I was like, what? Felt like I had no control over my life. And I started to like resent God and this mysterious plan that he had for me that I felt like I had no say in.
I know that evangelicals would call it quiverful, the idea that God really wants you to have a big family. Is
Hmm.
that common in Mormonism?
Yes. We're taught that, and you'll have to tell me if this is an evangelical thing too. So we're taught that we existed before this life, we call it the pre-existence, and like all of our spirits were there. And there's this movie called Saturday's Warrior that a lot of Mormons love. And it shows this family up there, and they're like, we all decided who our parents were going to be. We knew who our siblings were. And so a lot of people have this fear that they have these children up there waiting for them, that like they covenanted, like, I'm gonna bring you to earth. And they're scared that they're letting them down and not giving them a body to come to earth.
Wow, that's a guilt trip and a half.
Yes.
We didn't have that same idea. I went to Bible college to be a pastor, and I remember one time one of the classes went through this topic of where did our souls come from, and they gave the different options. They didn't say this is the right one or this is the one that this school believes. They just said some people believe that God creates your soul the moment of conception. Some people believe you're probably kind of like there's like a reservoir of souls and God assigns you. He's like, we don't really see evidence of any answer in the Bible, so we don't really know. It's up to you to believe what you think about that. And we just kind of moved on, but we definitely didn't talk about like you existed somewhere before. Although it is an interesting topic. It's crazy though, the idea of what you're saying, where this pressure to have children. We had it for different reasons, but our pressure was mostly, I think, two or three things. One of them was just, this is a blessing from God. This is his design. He loves children. And, why would you reject God's blessing? And also, it's just normal. If you're going to be, having sex on a very regular basis as a loving couple, it's probably going to happen unless you're doing something to prevent it, which means you're getting in the way of God. Why would you prevent what God clearly has designed to happen over and over and over? And so people would just feel like it's just against God's design. But then also in terms of like the culture war, the morality issue, like we need to outbreed and therefore outvote the pagans. So if there's a lot more of us than them, then eventually, it might not be in our generation, but in 2 or 3 generations, we're going to outnumber the pagans, 10-1. And so we'll get to vote the way we want to. And so that was kind of I'm sure there's more to it than that, but that was some of the big ones of like, yeah, have as many kids as you can. And not everybody, I'm sure, bought into it, but it was a lot of people did. It was just really sad because you could just tell that some people were, especially like the homeschooler family, where maybe a mother was a great mother, but she wasn't cut out necessarily to be a homeschool teacher. And she could love those kids to death, but it probably would have been a better choice for them to be in school. And, with 10 kids all going crazy, bouncing off the walls, she feels the need to not just have them, but to teach them and keep them at home until they're like in, later middle or high school. And so just a lot of pressure. I saw a lot of families kind of fall through the cracks with that pressure. It's sad.
Yeah, it absolutely. It breaks my heart, as a woman who very much struggled postpartum, and I have neurodivergent kiddos. I can't provide everything that they need, like socialization wise, therapy wise. And so, it just breaks my heart to think of all these families with way more kids than they probably wanted to have, and then having to school them and be everything for them too.
Yeah. Did you ever see Monty Python's works? You ever see some of those movies? Remember that one? I forget if it's a movie or a skit, but every sperm is sacred. Like you gotta keep making the babies.
Yes.
You mentioned before that your husband was Catholic. What was the journey like for him to, I assume, come to Mormonism and for you all to agree that was the way your family was going to be? Like, did he resist that, and did he try to pull you into Catholicism? Like, how did that work?
Yeah, he never tried to pull me into Catholicism because he himself was struggling with some of those beliefs. And it was also the time when all of the priest scandals were breaking. And so he was just not very happy with that. So being the good Mormon I gave him a Book of Mormon, and he started reading it. And this makes me laugh now. It was 2011, and so there was going to be 11/11/11, and so at 11/11 that day I made a wish that he would be Mormon. And he texted me the next morning, and he was like, I was praying last night and I feel really good about the Book of Mormon. Like, I feel like there's some truth in it. And I was like, my wish came true. And so he started learning about it. He really liked, when you're first learning about it, they're very much like, you can ask any question you want. he really loved that aspect of it. And so he started meeting with the missionaries at my house or at other places because he knew his family wouldn't love that. And then he eventually told them he wanted to become Mormon, and that was a huge event in their family. It did not go well. And so we got married when we were 20 and we moved out, and then he got baptized a couple weeks after that. And like now I feel so much guilt for the pain and suffering I caused their family by bringing this religion into their lives and thinking that I knew better than them and I had the truth and they didn't. And so, yeah, I do feel a lot of guilt, and I've been so grateful that they've forgiven me and have moved past it. But yeah.
I can definitely echo that. I've gone back to some people and apologized, but I remember even as a kid, like a little kid, the arrogance I had. I preached as an evangelical kid to a Roman Catholic girl down the street, told her she doesn't have the right belief and that she was going to burn in hell. And she caused some issues there. But it's sad to think about the damage. And we were so confident, but also, I mean, part of it is, I don't want to take any responsibility off of us for having done it, but also we were all very groomed. You're groomed to be like, not just that you need to believe this, but you need to share it because, like you mentioned, the sin of omission. If you don't do the right thing, it's as serious as if you committed an actual sin. And in the same way, it was like if you don't warn someone where judgment is impending and they're gonna be in a big horrible spot soon, and that it's the judgment's coming, and you could have warned them. And you didn't, like the blood is on your hands. Even if they would have, God would have known you could have preached to them or talked to them and they would have still stayed where they are. At least you took the responsibility. You're not responsible to change hearts, but you're responsible to be the messenger. And if you don't take that seriously, like you're not really honoring God and taking it seriously. And of course, all those metaphors, if you saw someone burning in a house, wouldn't you go try to save the people that are stuck inside? Like, of course, well, these people are about to burn in hell. And so we were groomed for it. And we were terrified by it, but still, it is sad to think about what we were doing. And yeah, I've got years worth of that. In terms of once you all were on the same page, did it feel like you were kind of on the straight and narrow for a while? Like you were all like, we're in time and in eternity, we're going to be together. And this is great.
Absolutely. So once we got married, which at 20, everyone, my side and all my Mormon, that's very normal. But his side and friends are like, what are you doing? And even now I'm like, if my kids wanted to get married at 20, I would be so worried about what are they doing, even though I did it. So we got married, but like we were able to get grants and scholarship. Like my college, I was able to pay for everything. I have no student loans from then because since we were married, our income was so low. He was having a hard time in school before then. And then once we moved out, he was doing great in school and he was getting promotions at work and, he was moving up in the leadership of the church. Everyone loved him. Like everyone loved him at church, especially because he was a convert. And, we were just seeing so many blessings from God and, we were like, we're doing the right thing. And we were all in. All of our friends were from church. Church is all we did. Like we look back and we're really sad at all the things we missed out on because we were at church, 3 hours on Sundays and then serving throughout the week. And he was going and visiting people. He's very service driven. And so that felt really good to him, to go check in on families, to help them move, to help them with their finances, to figure out what to do. So yeah, we were all in. We were getting so much like love and support from the community as well. And it felt like it was because we were doing the right thing.
Yeah, I would guess too, especially in a traditionally white environment, to have a strong, clean-cut white male that can preach hard and lead the group. I mean, they get so much privilege so fast. It's almost scary, like you mentioned, getting married early. And a strong corollary to that is how often young men who do at least appear to be on the straight and narrow with their walk with God and their testimony and their abilities in the church, they get given so much privilege. I mean, I had keys to the church. I mean, it was a pretty big church. I had a key to the church. As a teenager, I was in charge of Sunday school class. Like the entire Sunday school class was under me for a certain age group. the entire youth group was under my, tutelage at like age 21. Like, what in the world? And I remember it really just hitting me that when I was in Bible college, the reason I stopped trying to be a pastor was there's actually pastoral epistles, 1st, 2nd Timothy, where they talk about what a pastor should be. And it specifically says it should be an elder, meaning an older man, who has raised children well. Like, they'll give you this little flock. And if you can take care of this little flock, meaning you raise your own kids, then I'll give you a big flock. But let's see if you can tend to the little flock first. And I remember like all these guys around me, the preacher boys, like 21 years old. And like, we're all about to preach to 50 and 60-year-olds about how to live. Like, we don't know anything about life yet. We're just babies. And the arrogance is just, when you step back, you're like, oh my God, we were so arrogant. All of us were.
Yeah, I did want to clarify. So my husband actually is Mexican. And so people loved him even more because they were like, look, we're getting diversity into the church. And but the Mormon church is famous for their missionaries, and they're sending out 18, 19-year-olds, a lot of times white boys. I learned this, it was so funny. So a lot of the ones here in Colorado were from Utah. You don't get to pick where you go. The church assigns you. And so they're from these little communities in Utah. And so when they came here to Colorado, marijuana had just been legalized. And so the mission presidents had to like give them lessons on marijuana and like, don't accept baked goods from people. And like the pot brownies are a thing. And they don't know about these things, but they're like telling like elderly people that they know how to live life better than them. One thing that really bothers me is the Mormon church is a multi-billion-dollar corporation, but they preach tithing, and so they want 10%, and they say that you'll be blessed. The windows of heaven will open with blessings upon you if you pay your tithing. And the missionaries asked us to go teach a woman who lived at our apartment complex about tithing. And I was like, and we've been blessed and we can afford all these things and I can pay for my college. And meanwhile, she had like chronic illnesses and she couldn't work, and her truck had just broken. She had all these financial things going on, and little me is like, pay your tithing, give the church 10% and it'll all work out. And it didn't work out for her. It got worse. And the audacity, I feel so ashamed of it now.
Yeah, I'm sure I did much the same. I did want to ask, I titled this, I picked the titles for everyone, just so everyone knows, in case it doesn't sound right. I picked the title, but I picked it based on trying to get the vibe of your Instagram channel. Yeah. And so I want to kind of keep the main track in a sense as almost 2 tracks. Usually it's just what you believed and why you left. Yeah. I want to keep going that way as we weave through this, but I also want to sort of start to weave in the idea of purity culture and eventually kind of talk about both how you left Mormonism and also how you've healed from purity culture. But just to keep both of those in mind here, could you tell us more about what does purity culture look like from a Mormon perspective? I know it's woven into Christianity in general, into our culture, but what are some of the distinctives that you saw maybe in Mormonism, or just how did it flesh out for you? And did you enjoy it? Did you think it was a good thing at the time?
Oh boy. Okay, let's go. So where do I start? They have this little pamphlet called The First Strength of Youth, and they give it to the teens, and it's about lots of things. It's like, don't swear because that drives the spirit away, and you should learn about Christ and blah, blah, blah. But the biggest section of the one that I grew up with, they've since rewritten it, so it's hard to find it, was modesty standards. And the girls list was always like this long, like, don't show your shoulders, don't show your midriff, don't wear tight clothing, your shorts need to go to your knees. Like, it was very like defined. And the boys, it was like, don't wear clean clothing, take a bath, like stuff like that. And I was like, excuse you. But when I was 12, and I don't know how common this is everywhere else, but we had this big meeting where all the teenagers were brought in with our parents, and I don't know what the equivalent would be. Anyway, a leader got up and was telling us about all of the ways that we could commit sexual sins. And so he was like, he had like this PowerPoint, and it was like necking, petting, heavy petting, and so forth. And I was 12. I barely understood what sex was, and I didn't know what any of these things were, and I was like disgusted. I was like, why would I ever do any of these things? Why would I let anyone do them to me? And then he talked about how if you did these things, you needed to confess them to a bishop, which, as I said earlier, is just a random guy from the congregation. They have no training in therapy and counseling in how to be a bishop. And then they said if you kept doing the sins repeatedly, that you could be excommunicated. And so that means you can't go to heaven. And so it was really scary. I actually based a scene in my book on that meeting because I was like, this is wild. People need to read about this. And so, yeah, that was my introduction to it. And I was like, I'm never going to do those things. I'm never going to do those. And they focus very much on like, you shouldn't date till you're 16. Because if you date earlier, you might be scared into temptation. And so I had all these crushes and all this stuff, but I would never act on it because I wasn't 16 yet. And I was just very fearful of dating and then also of my body because we were taught repeatedly that we needed to dress modestly because boys think about sex all the time and we need to not tempt them and make things easier for them. And then honestly, and to this day, like I feel uncomfortable around like devoutly Mormon men because I'm like, this is how they were raised their whole life, that like they can't control themselves, that women need to dress better for them. And I've just heard so many stories from friends of them dating boys and like things go too far and they blame it on the girl and they take advantage of the girl and they're like, I can't control myself. And so very much like perpetuating like rape culture and all of this. And that really bothered me. I've always been like a little feminist as a kid. And so learning these things, I was just like, ew. But I never wore tank tops. I never wore short shorts. I was ashamed of my body. And then when I did get a boyfriend and then I was interested in those things, and we went too far, I felt so much shame. Like I was like depressed until I went to my bishop, who was my friend's dad. And then I had to confess in explicit detail every little thing we did. And I just felt so disgusted with myself. But as soon as I confessed, I felt better. But I did have to go through a repentance process where you're not allowed to take we call it the sacrament. I think it's communion at other churches, the bread and the water.
Yep.
And we pass them down the row. And so it's a very public thing. And so like my parents would see I wasn't taking it. And so then they knew I messed up. So that was embarrassing. But that's what I had to do to be forgiven by God.
No pressure.
Yeah. So
did you, can I ask, the whole idea of purity culture being rape culture, I've heard that used before, and in some ways it's so different from my experience. In my experience, purity culture was the exact opposite of it. And I'm just curious your thoughts on this as I develop it a little bit, but it was more the idea that, guys, these girls are daughters of the king. They, you may be in the backseat of a car, but God is right there watching, and he sees everything you're doing. You're undressing her in your mind. He sees right in your thoughts. He knows what you're doing in your fantasies and so forth. And so the message to us was not that you deserve to do these things to her and that you're so weak. It's that you better freaking control yourself or your life will mess up. You want God's plan A and he's going to give you plan B or plan C. If you mess this up, you're going to ruin your reputation and your faith will be shipwrecked, meaning you might be a Christian, but you're not going to be able to do ministry. And there was also such a strong messaging of the fathers who are involved. In other words, you don't go to that girl and say, hey, can I take you out on a date? You go to the father and say, may I have your permission to talk to your daughter? And he would interview you. Often he would say, let's talk about your faith. Let's talk about your theology. Let's talk about your ministry, your missions. What is your life about? What are your plans? Who are you? And if you didn't measure up, it wasn't like you got to get to first base. You didn't get to talk to her. It was like, she's off limits.
Wow.
And so it was not at all. I mean, you could maybe argue that some of them eventually became rape culture in their marriage, where eventually they got, he kind of got the prize, and he gets married, and maybe in marriage he feels like he has the right to always have her body, even if she doesn't want it in marriage. But in terms of purity, that's more patriarchy and more the Bible verses that say your body's not your own. But in terms of pure purity culture, my experience was more the idea that you better not touch her, or you're literally ruining your life, and you don't get a chance to even get near that girl. We kind of, it was almost like it was too difficult to date, because the really amazing girls, just like, oh my God, she's in a different league than us. It's like, why even try? She's like, her daddy's an elder. He's not going to let anybody talk to his girl. And so purity culture was for us a lot more about girls being basically untouchable. Did you go through that? Did you see that at all?
No, I didn't see a lot of dad involvement, and this could also be cultural. I grew up in Colorado. It's different everywhere. But wow, I saw more, the guys would be like blessing the sacrament. The teenage boys can bless the sacrament in the Mormon church. And you'd see the guy up there in his white shirt, and everyone be like, he's doing so amazing. He's doing great. Whereas I knew like what he was doing last night, and he was like having sex or doing other things. And I just saw more of, they would act holy at church, but that's not what they were doing. And I heard lots of pressure. My friends would get pressured from guys to be like, to go farther, and they'd be like, oh, well, you already like aroused me, and they'd be like, I have to have a release, or I'm gonna be in a lot of pain, and you did this to me, so you're responsible for this. So a lot of manipulation, and I saw one. So Mormons, once you go through the temple, you have to wear the garments, and they would be like feeling a girl up under her shirt, and then they'd be like, I can't date you because you weren't wearing your garments. And it's like, wait, you just broke the law of chastity, but you're judging her for, okay. So that's more what that's saw crazy. Was the hidden, yeah.
Wow, the hypocrisy and the craziness of that. Wow, like the letter of the law or whatever.
Yes.
Well, now did you mentioned the idea that that there was a point at which you had done some things that were at the time felt shameful.
Yeah.
How easy is it to get to a point where you, between your church and you and God, can be restored? There was a lot of talk in my background where people would say, even if you messed up all the way, there was a thing that for years they talked about second virginity, as crazy as that is, and all this. Like, is it hard to get that scarlet letter off of you and get restored? And especially with the idea of like, you could end up not going to heaven if you have done this stuff. Can you earn yourself back into the good graces of God?
Yes. So they had like the repentance, and because of, do you guys have the atonement, like the belief that Christ died for us, and because of that we can be forgiven for our sins if we go through repentance?
Yeah, I mean that's the only thing that matters in Christianity, really, is atonement. That
okay.
You can't be a good person and work your way up. You have to have Christ cover you.
Got it. Okay, yeah. So we believe that through the atonement we can repent. And so for little sins, that would look like confessing that, like if I lied to someone, then I would have to go to them, tell them I had lied, apologize if I'd stolen something, make restitution, and then confess it to God, and then I'd be good. For sexual sins, you would have to confess it to a bishop, and then the bishop would give you your repentance process. And so it would be, you can't take the sacrament, so everyone's going to know. And then I had to read this awful book. It was called The Miracle of Forgiveness. They don't even publish it anymore because it's so awful. I had to read that book, and I had a bunch of scriptures I had to read, and then I had to keep checking in with the bishop to make sure I hadn't messed up again. He also told me I should break up with my boyfriend. He was like, you're going to keep getting tempted. You're just going to this is going to keep happening. So you guys should just break up. Don't talk to him, whatever. So that was my repentance process for that. And then you don't want to do it again, because if you do it again, then it's more serious because you didn't give up the sin. You kept doing it. So yeah, that's what that looked like.
Hmm. It's interesting the way you're referring to the idea of having to break up with your boyfriend. That messaging, I heard that so much amongst the guys that I would talk with, and the guys studying to be pastors at the Bible college, because the messaging was, if you really loved her, your most important desire would be to protect her purity, not to manipulate it. Therefore, the
Mm,
fact that you're treating her kind of like a slut, or treating her like her purity is not that valuable, that means by definition you cannot love her. You cannot be in love with her. You must just simply love your lust and you love the physical part, but you can't love someone if you're not pursuing the best for them. And it was like this assumption, like if either one of you has chosen to go too far, then you both are not. There's no way you love each other. And looking back,
oh,
I think to myself that there may have been some people that just went too far because they were just horny as hell and under this pressure, but also there may have been some really good fits where they were a perfect fit for marriage and would have been great marriage partners and great parents together, but they felt this pressure that, oh, I did this, I did that, therefore we must not truly love each other, and God is so upset with us. And we basically, like, even if they didn't go all the way, it was like, if you've done anything, you've kind of laid this foundation that's so crumbly and shaky that you can never start a marriage on a foundation that shaky. And like, you think to yourself as a secular person now, like, it's not a shaky foundation to think, I love you and I adore you, but I'm also turned on by you. That's what a marriage,
yeah.
you should be turned on by your partner. And like, that's a beautiful thing. And I think some people literally ended relationships that would have probably been great, but they just felt too ashamed and too much like they pardon the expression, but they'd fucked up, against God so
Yeah.
much. But it's sad to think about.
Wow. Like, we were never taught it in those terms, and that's heartbreaking. And that's actually what, and we'll talk about books more later, but the premise of my book is this couple was broken up from the shame of messing up, and then they would have been a great couple. Um, and that, yeah, you want to be attracted to your partner. I've seen so many stories of people who didn't realize they were queer and they got married, and then they were like, oh, and they're like, I thought I was just really righteous because I was never tempted to break the law of chastity or whatnot. And so it messes with your head.
Mm. That is crazy. Now, going back to your story, I want to just put a pin in the purity culture topic, and we'll come back to it in a few minutes. But for Mormonism itself, strictly, what was the earliest memory that you have of the first time that you said, wait a second, there's a problem here? Not necessarily just like, oh, I need to figure out better theology because I don't understand this concept, but just like, I actually feel like an unsettledness about the whole worldview. What's the first seed you can recall from your time?
Ooh, okay. So we have this saying in Mormonism that you have a shelf, and that once something feels weird, you put it on the shelf and you're not going to deal with it. I have so many little ones from growing up. I, again, like getting baptized, and I was like, I didn't choose to do this. Why are you praising me for this? You told me to do it. I did it. And then LGBTQ teachings. The church has this proclamation that marriage is between a man and a woman. And, once I was in high school and I met gay people, I was like, why can't they be in love? I don't understand why God would want someone to be alone the entirety of their life. That is just absolutely cruel. And people would be like, oh, well, that's their trial for this life. And in the next life, they'll be straight. And I was like, okay, put that on the shelf.
Wow.
And then the next one was, the next big one I can remember is, so I had my first son and I was following all these parenting Instagram accounts, and I found one that was about how to teach your children how to be safe, like consent, and, help them stay safe. And they were talking about healthy sexuality and like from a brain perspective. And I was just like, this is not what I was taught. And I was learning, like, masturbation is very developmentally normal, and and lots of things. And I was just like, this isn't what I was taught. And then at the time, I was following this account of this woman named Natasha Helfer, who was a sex therapist. And I was learning about all this stuff from her. And she actually got excommunicated from the church because she was teaching healthy sexuality, ethical. She was practicing ethical therapist standards on her Instagram page, and they were against church teachings. And they told her she needed to stop, and she refused. And so she got excommunicated, and that was really big for me. And then I was just also questioning. I started hating going to church because I was hearing those sermons every week from all these random people, and it was just not what I agreed with. My husband is Latino, and it was very sometimes racist teachings, or just it didn't match my morals my values. And I was just hearing that every week, but then I would go online and talk with other nuanced Mormons who were questioning things, and I would feel so seen with them. And I was like, I want to go to church with them, not with the people I'm assigned to go to church with. And so I was like, why do they have to do it this way? And here's a fun one. Mormons believe in a heavenly mother. So they believe that we were created by a heavenly mother and a heavenly father. But I was taught growing up, we don't talk about heavenly mother because she's so sacred that heavenly father is protecting her. And
that's different from the Holy Spirit?
Yeah, different from the Holy Spirit. And and they're like, where was I going with that? Oh, Heavenly Mother. And I was like, I want to learn about this female deity that I come from. I don't like the idea of only talking to a male God. I love this idea. And a lot of women online were talking about her, writing poetry about her, creating art about her. And the church shut it down. They were like, you guys need to stop talking about Heavenly Mother so much. We've been taught what we're allowed to know right now. If God wants us to know more, he will reveal it. And so that felt really icky. And I learned about, there's this scholar, I think his name is Dan McClellan, and he's a BYU biblical scholar. Yeah. And he was talking a lot about, through the translations of the Bible, the verses about homosexuality being bad were not translated quite correctly. And it meant more like an older man with a young boy. That was what was the issue, not that it was two men. And so I was just questioning the Bible translations. And then I was learning about polygamy and the multiple wives. And I had someone close to me, their spouse passed away. And if they wanted to they had a hard time dating, because if they wanted to get remarried, they would have to break their eternal sealing with the first spouse if they wanted to be sealed to the new one. But men can be sealed to multiple women, so they don't have to make this eternal decision of which spouse am I going to spend eternity with. And so that never sat good with me either. I just threw a bunch of things at you.
You weren't in a group at all that entertained the idea of polygamy anymore, right? That's just the FLDS side? Yeah, that's the FLDS, all the offshoots. And they very much villainize them, and they're like, we have nothing to do with them. But they used to, right?
Yes.
They used to.
Yes. And then I actually found this historical podcast. It's the Sunstone History Podcast, if anyone's interested. And it was wild just to find out how all this actually went down when you go to the actual historical sources. So, yeah.
That's crazy. In terms of your deconstruction through all those issues, one of the things that comes up a lot for people, and they're more from my background, is the struggle between you're learning these things and they don't make sense, and the cognitive dissonance is really unsettling, but you have experienced God personally. We talk all the time about it's not about being saved in the sense that you get a get out of jail free card, or that you're getting fire insurance. This is about a personal relationship with a living God. You are known by him, and you're getting to know him, and you're talking to him. He is your father. There's a respect, but there's also a deep love. And you also get to the point of talking about your experiences where you say, I have tasted and seen that the Lord is good. I've experienced him. I've felt his presence. I've seen him answer prayers, but I've sensed him give me his will for things, but also I've just felt him. It's like I'm talking, just like you could go to your husband and, and talk to him, and he's really there. And if someone said, no, he's not there, you can say, no, I can literally bring you to him. He's right in the other room. It was almost like that the idea of God was there. And so the idea of saying this God isn't real, or this religion isn't real, is like, but there might be some things I need to tweak, but he's real in the sense that he's in the next room. I can show you him. I feel him. I've experienced him. I just talked to him this morning. And so a lot of people struggle with that because they've sensed his actual presence. Did you struggle with that part of it, or was it a lot easier for you if you had some of the academics and the issues in place? All the things could crumble right away, or did you feel like you were still kind of like? What I mean is it gets to a point where you basically start to talk to God as if you're in desperation, like, God, there's this pile of issues. The shelf is full of stuff, but God, I know you're there. So it's time for you to show up big and answer these questions. I've put up my fleece. Please answer these questions. My faith is weak. Increase my faith, Lord. And you just kind of know that he's there until you eventually realize he's not there. But until you get there, you like these issues are sort of on the side. The main thing is I know he's real. Did you have that? Did you struggle with that?
Yes. I mean, I had so many moments where, I felt like I had seen God or felt his presence. And for me, it was always that, like, that warm, the chills feeling, like feeling enveloped. Or I had this moment. I really liked the Bible story of when Christ is on the boat and he tells the storm to stop. And they have a hymn at the Mormon church. It was my favorite hymn about that. And I was stuck in this torrential downpour, and I was just like, I don't know what to do right now. Like, do I pull over? Do I keep driving? Like, is it, that area of town would flood a lot. And I was just like, please, God, help me, like, stop this storm. And it instantly stopped. And I was like, what the heck? So that was like a really cool moment for me. But I felt God more in those little moments of talking with him and telling him about what was going on in my life, what I'm trying to figure out. And then I would feel like his inspiration later. Like, I'd be like, for example, I was like, do I need to increase this medicine, like medical decisions? And then I would have like an epiphany, like 20 minutes later. And I was like, oh, thank you, God, for giving me this answer. And, I felt like my prayers were answered with, like, my husband. Like, he joined this church and we were so in it together and we were so in love, and I got to keep him. And, I didn't have to go marry some weird Mormon boy from Idaho. And I got to be with my best friend. And, so I had all these moments. And when I was starting to deconstruct, I was praying so much. I just kept saying, like, I need to raise my kids a different way. And I would feel that, like, what I took then as God of, like, yes, you're on the right path. Like, you do need to raise your kids a different way. My oldest was autistic, and, like, I knew he was going to be a very black and white thinker. And I didn't want him to, like, be told when he was 5 that he's a sinner and that he's bad and he needs to be saved, because I was like, he's not going to be able to, like, differentiate this as easily as, like, a neurotypical kid. And, my biggest fear was, like, one of my kiddos would be queer, not because I thought there was anything wrong with that, but because I knew the church had such a high suicide problem with queer youth. And I was like, I don't want my kid to be taught that he's bad or those things. And so I would just pray and pray and pray. And, like, I just kept feeling over and over what I took then as God, like, no, you need to live a different way. It's okay. Like, you're going the right way. And so I left the church first, and then later is when I I lost my faith in God. So yeah.
How long after you left the church did you have the actual loss of faith in God?
I think it took me, like, probably a year. Because So I hesitate to say this just because I don't want people to not get help who need it, but I do have OCD. And so learning about thoughts and how the brain works and thought patterns, that's what really helped me deconstruct my faith in God. Because, those random inspirations I would feel, or those random thoughts of like, you need to go do this thing. I was like, that's just a thought that I just had. That doesn't mean it's true. That doesn't mean it's right. That doesn't mean it's wrong. And then the farther away from the church I got, the more I learned to trust in myself and like, no, like I made all these good decisions in my life. I made all this stuff happen. Like it wasn't this mysterious plan. Like I did the research, when things didn't work, I pivoted. And so learning that I could trust myself. And then I realized like all of those thoughts were my intuition. I also, I had mental health struggles, like periods of depression. And during those times, I wouldn't feel God during those times. And I was like, excuse me, like, where are you? You're supposed to be with me in my darkest moments. And I had heard from other people going through the same thing. And like the church put out articles of like, oh, it's just a test of your faith or, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, no, I didn't feel this spirit during those times because I was depressed. Like, of course I didn't feel the warm fuzzies or I had a hard time making decisions or whatnot. Like I was depressed. So, yeah.
I've got to imagine that it was quite an interesting set of conversations you must have had where you clearly were the conduit for your husband leaving Catholicism and joining Mormonism, but then you'd have to tell him eventually that you're actually leaving that. How were you able to introduce the questions early so that he was part of your deconstruction, or did you wait until you were all the way out?
So he had been kind of questioning things himself and hadn't told me about it. And then so a lot of the things I learned about the church was I was taught history this way. And it was like, actually, this is what actually happened. And so learning those things, I was like, wait. And so I saw something about a translation of some book and I like looked at my husband and I was like, what is this? And he was like, do you actually want to know? And I was like, what do you mean? And he was like, well, I've actually been looking into that and here's these sources and here's this. And I was like, wait, what? And I panicked because I was like, my husband's going to leave the church. We're not going to be together forever. There goes my eternity. I always knew this was going to happen. And so I panicked and I panicked for a couple of days. And then I started doing research and I started, listening to the podcast I wasn't supposed to. And like, I tried to read from historians who like weren't Mormon. Like they had no skin in the game on whether I believed in this or not. They were just like, hey, this is what this diary says, multiple primary sources. This is what happened on this day. And it was like, yeah. So I went on my own journey and I was actually ready to leave before he was. I was like, I'm done. And he was like, well, should we keep going? Like, maybe it's good for the kids. I was like, I hate going. I'm done. And so I'm really lucky because I have a lot of friends who like they left the church and their husband stayed in and it's been very rough. And so I'm really lucky. We were both like independently researching on our own. And I would talk to him occasionally, but he was a little farther than me. And I was just like, I'm not ready to hear this. And so, yeah. But when we were done, we were about done at the same time.
Now, we haven't talked a lot about your extended family, but were your parents still Mormons and how did they respond to all this?
Yes. So my extended family is all true believing. They're all still in. When I first left the church, I had a relative getting married in a temple, and you can't go in the temple unless you're an actively practicing member. And so they were like, hey, this is the time of the wedding. And I was like, oh no, I'm going to have to tell them I don't go anymore. And so I told them then, I was like, hey, I'm just questioning. I'm trying to figure out my beliefs. I won't go to the temple, but I'll support you. But I had my whole life, I had been told to tell everyone what I believed, to share my beliefs. And I had asked a lot of questions earlier on when I was still believing, but I was like, this doesn't sit right with me. And I would ask my parents questions and stuff, and they would just repeat the lines from the church, like, no, like, this is what it is. And so when I finally left, I was like, you know what? For once, I'm going to keep this to myself. I don't need to tell them right now. I told them about, I think, a year after I had left, because it was just starting to get harder to keep up, to not say it than to say it. And I'm really lucky because my family is very good with like boundaries, and you know, they know a lot about like mental health and boundaries. And so I was just like, hey, here's what's up. I know this is going to be upsetting for you. I know this is going to be hard for you. But you can't talk about it with me. Feel free to talk about it with other people, with whoever you need to, but I don't want you sending me articles. I don't want guilt trips. I don't want you coming to me crying. Like, I'm just trying to tell you where I am. And they've been so respectful of that, which I've really appreciated.
Is that, in your experience, typical? Like, do most Mormon families have a level of respect?
No, they freak out. A lot of people I've talked with, their extended family panics. They're like trying to get them to come back. Some of them will like try to teach their kids things when they're babysitting them to like, or they'll try to get intel from the kids. They'll cry, they'll sob, they'll be like, we're not going to be with you for forever. You've gotten lost. You've been deceived. I have not had the normal experience.
I do have, I do want to get to the purity culture again in a little bit, but I have 2 or 3 big questions to ask about this part of it. So I'll try to keep this moving. But in terms of, at that point when you've left Mormonism, a lot of people might be tempted to say you were in the wrong church, you're in the wrong denomination. Were you in any way pulled into, either from other people or just in your own mind, to the idea that maybe you needed to explore Catholicism or explore evangelical Christianity? Did you go that route, or was it just like, if Mormonism's wrong, the others are so close, they're probably wrong too?
Yeah, I actually went to, I can't remember what denomination it was. I went to a church a couple times, and it was like, the pastor was gay, and I loved their sermons. Like, I was like, oh, like, this person has actually studied the Bible, went to school for this, like, has emotional intelligence, like, knows how to counsel people, like, isn't, a banker who was just asked to do this. And it was beautiful. Like, they're just there was a lot of stuff going on, in the world politically and whatnot. And I was just feeling very scared of the world. And, their sermons were uplifting and made me feel hope. And they were beautiful, but it also still it just still had the same vibes though. And so I was just like, I love this. This is beautiful. But I just don't think that my values right now align with Christianity or what a lot of them are taught. And I was like, I just need a palate cleanser. I need to take a break and come at this with fresh eyes. So we did go to a different church for a while, and then we just stopped and we're like, let's give religion a break and come back with it with fresh eyes.
I love the way you're presenting that. It's funny too, for a lot of us, the route includes not just studying the origins and the history of our own denomination, but just of Christianity in general. And my path definitely included the idea of comparative mythology. And so for me, a lot of the reasons that I didn't need to explore too much more besides what I did was I understood that how they'd created the Jesus character and the stories of the Gospels. He's clearly based on other stories. And, I can go into that more, but just to keep it moving, he's clearly based on a lot of other stories, a lot of other epic poems and things from that Greco-Roman mystery cult timeframe, and the Greco-Roman pantheon, as well as the Jewish pantheon with the, Yahweh and all that. But you end up get at a point where you're like, if I were to follow Jesus, I'm not just as soon following Dionysius. I'm literally following Dionysius. I'm literally following Mithras. And you're like, but and a lot of the philosophy is clearly coming from the Pythagoreans, as well as other from Plato. And it's like, I might as well say I follow Plato. And so many Christians, I think, I've used the idea like if you're on the train of deconstruction and the train has multiple stops, the last stop is atheism. That for a lot of people feels too far. So you kind of go one or two stops before that and say, I just follow the good stuff of Jesus. This stuff about love your neighbor and turn the other cheek. And I'm like, yeah, but that's literally not Jesus. That's literally another philosopher that they copied to make the Jesus character. So you might as well say, I don't follow Jesus. I follow Plato, or I follow whoever. But it's weird how we get so addicted to the idea of Jesus. But I think once you get enough knowledge about comparative mythology, that you eventually are like, you know what, like there's nothing here. And like, yes, I have not investigated, every single denomination. And so I certainly haven't investigated all the aspects of Islam or Buddhism or whatever. But it just, your spidey senses go up and you just kind of smell the wretched smell of ancient patriarchy as well as mythology in an era when that's all they had. That was their highest truth, was probably mythology and esotericism. Be like, we know better. Science isn't a god, but science has illuminated us to the fact that we're so superstitious, and these religions were created in eras when superstition reigned rampant. And if you got sick or had like a certain mental health issues, it was clearly a demon. It wasn't a mental health issue. Now it's different now, and it just all smells rotten to the core. And it feels kind of liberating to think, at this point, unless someone has really good evidence, your truth claims all are like, they have almost no weight on me anymore. It's so freeing,
Wow. Yes. You just unlocked a memory for me. And I didn't know, I'd never heard the term comparative mythology before. But yes, that was part of it. I think like it was about 6 months after we had left the church, there was this giant Egyptian exhibit at our museum. And so we went, and it was talking about like, oh, they worshipped black cats, or they worshipped cats because they would eat the mice, and so that wouldn't ruin their grain stores. And they would pray to this when they were sick. And that was a huge light bulb moment for me, where I was just like, oh, like we're all just trying, life is scary, the unknown is scary, and we're all just trying to explain the unknowable and cling to a story that helps us feel like we're more in power and we can understand things. And Mormonism has an answer for everything. And I was like, oh, like that's all religion, like the book of Revelations with the blood moons and the whatnot. I was like, that must have been so scary to see if you didn't understand the science between, or a lunar eclipse or a solar eclipse, all these events. And so, yeah. And I've always said, I think now that I've deconstructed, I think the most powerful thing in this world are stories, and the stories that we tell. And the Bible is a story, and all these mythologies are just stories, and they help us. They convey morals, they convey values, they convey all of these things. And so that's what I look at, that faith as, and all faiths. And that's why I haven't gone back to one, because I'm like, they're all just stories, and we need to decide which stories we want to live by and which values are important to us. And yeah, exactly. Yeah. And the archetypes do matter. I mean, it does matter that we are a society based on archetypes with our religions, especially, but they don't, it's so nice to not have to think that those reign supreme over our lives anymore. And speaking of stories, one of the stories that meant a lot to me as a kid, have you ever read Anne of Green Gables or seen the movie? Oh yes, I love that.
When I was a kid, we watched that show, the Canadian version that was made like 20 years ago. We watched over and over and over. I have Anne of Green Gables running through my blood, but she uses that phrase, scope for the imagination. And I've always loved that idea, like when they're driving by the lake and they're like, she's like, what's that lake? And it's like, oh, that's Barry Lake. And she's like, oh no, that's the lake of shining waters. And she was more just saying it like, have a scope for the imagination to be poetic and artistic. But I feel like that phrase, scope for the imagination, has stuck with me in the sense of like, yes, it's possible that Jesus was who he was claimed to be in the Gospels. And yes, it's possible Joseph Smith saw these gold plates, whatever. It's possible, but are there other possibilities for how this stuff evolved? And it's possible that some people lied to us about the origins. And once you really give yourself that full freedom to say, I suspect that there may have been either some foul play or something else going on here. And eventually to say, which one sounds more likely? That someone made this stuff up, especially if they can get money or power for it. What's more likely, that that's what happened, or that, that this actually happened, that this guy walked on water, and that all the other Greco-Roman mystery cult gods that also walked on water, that they were all fake, but this one's the real one. Like C.S. Lewis says, he's the one true mythology. And it just, eventually it's like your scope for the imagination, and especially when you have a little skepticism, it just makes you think, yeah, this doesn't sound right. And I mean, that's the crux of it, is saying, does this sound right anymore? And for so many of us, that puts us in the spot of judge. You're like, you're judging God. I'm like, my whole life, God's judging me. But to say, no, I'm not. Yeah, it sounds like I'm judging God. I'm not judging God. I'm judging your story about God.
Yes.
I'm not judging this character. I'm judging the story about his character. And once you do that, it's like, the scales fall from your eyes. You're like, oh my God, what have I've been the sucker in the room this whole time,
Absolutely. Yeah. Once you look at it as a story, and yeah, what's most plausible.
So before we get to the purity culture, which I want to get to shortly, could you just talk generically, not about the purity culture part, but just generically, what was it like? Like, were you angry? Were you relieved? Were you happy? And how did you start to reclaim your identity once you said this is not true anymore?
Oh man, yeah, I was relieved because I wouldn't have to teach my kids these things that I had always struggled with and wrestled with. And I was just like, I don't have to teach them these because this isn't how I go to heaven. And I was very angry. I'm still angry sometimes. Like, it's really hard. My extended family, the church is like their whole life. And so they'll just be telling me what they've done this week or what's going on in their life. And hearing that was really triggering for a while, because I was just like, you don't have to go there for 3 hours, and you don't have to do this. Like, you don't have to do any of this. And don't you see that that's a harmful teaching? Like, why are you doing that? But yeah, so lots of anger and just finding out all the ways I had been lied to or manipulated, and all the time I had missed out on, like the freedom I didn't have to like explore, or like I didn't date. Like we barely went out with friends in my 20s. Like, I barely hung out with my roommates because I have to ride the bus to go home so I could go to church that weekend. And yeah, so anger at all the things we missed out on.
It's amazing. So going to purity culture has obviously become a huge piece of what you do now. And again, anyone that doesn't know, wasn't here at the beginning, we have some links for you to check out the books you're writing. Just to sort of give a segue to that, a lot of us struggle so much because the shame is so embedded from the earliest days. Don't look, don't touch, don't think about it. And it isn't just like don't get into hardcore porn, or don't embrace eroticism, or don't masturbate. It's like anything to do with that world. You are just like, it's the dualism. It's, the spirit is good, the body is bad. And eventually you'll be freed from this body of sin and be a spiritual being. But it's so deep in us, and pleasure and any kind of exploration and so forth, it's certainly not sexual fantasies or anything like that. It's just so off limits.
Yeah.
And so for a lot of us, we can technically say, I know that's not real, that's mythology, but the roots of this thing went so deep. How did you begin to pull those out and actually just, not just be safe in your own head, but safe in your body too?
Yeah, I'm like, where do I even start? Yeah, so I had deconstructed the church and I had left, but I still had so much shame around desires and sexuality and my body. And I was like, logically, I know this isn't here, but it won't go away. And I learned a lot about, after my first child was born, I had to go to pelvic floor physical therapy, and learning about, like, a lot of women have like vaginismus, where their shame is so bad, it's in their head that like they can't have sex, it's so painful. So I learned about that, and I learned about just like the mind body connect. Like, I'd be in this therapy trying to heal like scar tissue, and they'd be like, I just wasn't in my body. It was like I only existed up to my belly button. And so like I had to really rethink a lot of things and practice mindful breathing and go through all of that therapy. And so I also was scared to read like romance books because we were taught they were sinful. We were taught they were pornography. And I picked one up one day after I'd been out of the church, I think for a year at this point. It was Happy Place by Emily Henry. And I cried. I felt so seen. I loved that book so much. It was talking a lot about like relationships when both of you are struggling with mental health and feeling burnt out. And, you know, there was all things I could relate to. And then there were some spicy scenes. And I read the rest of Emily Henry's books and I started reading more romance books. And then I just found like they felt healing. And I had been taught, you know, my whole life that boys think about sex all the time. Like that's for boys. Girls don't think about sex. But I was thinking about sex as a teenager. I was thinking about sex as an adult. And I felt so shameful for that. And so to read these books and see these women who had desires, who were having sex, who wanted to have sex, like it was really healing for me. And I actually did some research and they found that reading romance books actually is like therapy. Like it heals your nervous system. It's a healthy way to explore these topics that have been taboo and scary. And the more you read them, the more it trains your brain and your body like this is okay. And I felt that in my life. After reading all of these romance books and having this healing, I was finally able to like feel good in my body and explore these things and not feel that guilt and shame.
When you look at the idea of the part of this, it's not just the purity culture, but it's really wrapped up in, I mean, a couple things. Certainly modesty culture is a big one. Don't show your skin. Virginity culture, shame culture. You've been trained to think you're bad and you're wicked in every which way. God is wonderful, but he basically it doesn't love you because of you. He loves you in spite of you, and that someday he's going to kind of clean you up. But for now, he's going to kind of declare you clean through Jesus. But someday he'll clean you up for real in heaven. But you're kind of just getting through it, and to realize on a true psychological, emotional level, like none of that's real, and to think in some ways about trying to sort of go back in time. I know this is science fiction, but go back in time in your head and go back to the childhood time when that started and try to undo it a little bit, go back to the shadow work where this all started and you got off track, and to think what would I have been like as a human if I had been praised, if I just thought this was all normal and good. And especially if there was just no sense of taboo. And I'm not saying that it's all Christianity. Some of it's just our culture.
No, yeah.
But if I could go back and just re-embrace myself, what would I like? And for a lot of us, it's not just the purity culture. It's not just the sexuality. It's just you. Like it's you as a person. And I think a lot of us are realizing that as we try to heal certain specific things, such as purity culture or other aspects of our deconstruction, that what we're really getting back to in some ways is we're doing the layers of the onion. And when you dig a little deeper, you realize that what's going on is it's really about self-love and self-loathing, self-hate. You hate yourself. And I've told this story before, so forgive me for anyone that's a regular attender, but I don't think you've watched my channel enough to know, so I'll say it.
Yeah. When
I was in Bible college, I had this wonderful experience, painful but wonderful. This lovely man, it was a piano teacher. I signed up for his lessons there at the school at Bible college, and it was supposed to be like 4 or 5 students at a time. I was the only one that picked that time slot. He could have canceled it and said you have to pick a different time slot, but instead he said no, I'll meet one-on-one with you. So we met one-on-one. Great lessons. Loved it. But there was this one particular day where we're playing the piano, or I'm playing for him and so forth, and he says, "Tim, I want you to turn the piano off. Let's just talk, just him and me." And he asked me a series of like 10 questions. And the last one he gets to at the end, he says, I just want to ask you this one last thing. You feel completely worthless, don't you? And I mean, I'm just like, I just out of nowhere, I start sobbing. But it's the idea of your beliefs versus your real. Your belief says, I've got so much worth because I'm in Christ. I am a child of the King. But you practically are like, I'm worthless. And worldview always dominates beliefs, even if the beliefs are more visible. And like you get to the point where with purity culture, like I want to embrace my body. I want to masturbate without shame. I want to enjoy sexuality and eroticism without shame. And that's your belief that that's where you should be going. You should be embracing it. but your worldview on the deeper level says, and I think what I read sort of the side, one of the comments here, Hannah wrote something about this, which we'll get to, about the roots of purity culture run deep, but they run much deeper. But like the idea is it's the deepestness is your worldview. Your body is and your mind is now saying, I'm done with the mythology, and the mythology instructed my sexuality. That's no longer true. Therefore, I'm free to enjoy my body and be without shame. But your worldview says, dirty, 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 dirty. You're a dirty, dirty little sinner. And so you can't just flip that switch. Do you feel like in some ways you have been able to incorporate, because you're pretty fun with your stuff. I mean, you're out there. You're like you're doing some cool stuff. It seems like you've crossed over a worldview level where it isn't just like you're trying to jump through hoops to tell yourself this is good. You're like, actually, like, this is really fun. Like, I'm having fun being in my embodied now. I'm having fun just being me and enjoying whatever that is with your being in your own skin again. How do you, when you see other people that you talk to about this stuff, how do you get people to see, like, wait a second, like, you might agree that this is mythology and it's irrelevant and it's toxic, but it's actually still running your life, including the way you feel in your body. How do you talk to people that you can just tell they've deconstructed heavily about the beliefs, but they have not deconstructed themselves, you know?
Yeah, that's one reason I chose to write a book, because I feel like stories are the way, I mean, it's how we were taught, and I feel like they're a good way to get people in and to realize these things subtly. And so that's part of, I've always been a writer, and I was like, I'm going to write a romance book, and I'm going to talk about purity culture, and I'm going to talk about shame. But it's also going to be bananas and have a reality TV show and all this other stuff. So it doesn't feel super didactic, but it's in there. It's part of the story. But yeah, and I will just, I mean, I'm always recommending, if I have especially women friends struggling, I'm like, hey, like, you should read. And I'll be like, what's your favorite genre? Because there's stuff in sci-fi, there's stuff in fantasy, there's romance, there's like romantic suspense. And, sometimes I'll bring the science to them. But also I just try to have empathy and be like, I was there, I get it, like, and share my story. And listening to other people's stories of their experiences growing up. I really liked the podcast. There's one called Girls Camp. There's one called Mormon Stories. Those are more Mormon specific. And just hearing other people work through that shame is what helped me be able to start my journey. So I always try to share be honest and vulnerable with people. Yeah.
It's amazing. One of the things I think that's really cool is you mentioned, I think the idea of nudity being a part of this a while ago, but it's amazing to me when you really get back to it, that in many ways we're not comfortable in our own skin. Mm-hmm. And you really have to do a lot of heart work to really get to the point where you're just happy being in your own body. Whether it's as simple as, go to a safe nudist camp for a week, just look at nude art, something, but I was on a journey that really helped me, where I was at a conservative, very fundamentalist college for my freshman year, and they had a huge art gallery, but to my shock and almost dismay at first, they had Baroque era paintings with topless women in them. And I asked the curator, like, how is it that we as conservatives who are so against porn have this, like, Baroque era topless women in our gallery? And they defended it. They're like, no, there's a difference between pornography and fine art nudity, which at this point, I have no problem with pornography either, if it's ethically sourced. But just saying, like, at that time, I was like, okay, so there's a difference between pornography and fine art nudity. And it's just like, you get to a point where you say that we have so vilified the body. And I feel especially bad. I just say this too, and then pass the ball back to you. I feel especially bad for women, because I think the message in so many versions of Christianity is you're basically there for your husband. Like, he's the one with this sex drive that's off the chain. And you basically, even if you enjoy it, you're basically there for his benefit. And I think so many people are realizing, like, just, it's not that you want to be focused on self-pleasure for the sake of being kinky or something. It's like, self-pleasure is a part of this healing journey, because you need to learn your body's not there to serve someone else. You get to connect with somebody else. That's a beautiful thing, but you're not there to serve someone else. And I feel like those verses where it says, your body's not your own, do not deprive each other except by mutual consent for a season for prayer, and then come back together so you're not tempted. Like, that was drilled into us. Your body's not your own. And I think probably more women than men took that as like, okay, my body belongs to my husband. And the men didn't really think about it in reverse, and the boundaries weren't really there. There was a lot of consent issues, but like just to take yourself back and say, I really want to be safe in my own skin. And I love the fact that you're being playful with it through your stories and creative, because that is so cool. And like I do I invite people to do poetry slams with me on the channel, but like whatever it is, whether you paint or write stories or do poetry or songs, like take something of this journey and make something creative and joyful, because you have to laugh at yourself. And you have to laugh at how much this weird journey has been, but you also get to be like creative and say, I want to find some way to dig through these layers. And a lot of this is like, it's almost, I have to ask this, is it autobiographical? Because in some ways, when people write a book to tell the world, hey, you all need to think differently about this, in many ways, we're writing books really to ourselves. In what way is your book autobiographical, and how has it helped you to, even though you're helping other people with it, to really help yourself?
Yeah. I would say the character, I wouldn't say it's autobiographical. I borrowed that meeting I had at 12 where I learned about sexuality and all the sins. I put that in there, like that happened in my life. But the rest of it are just elements of my life, of, people I've talked to, things I've noticed in my church congregation, stuff like that. And I just put that all together. I gave the love interest, his name's Jonah. I had him have OCD because I know a lot of men struggle with religious scrupulosity, which is religious OCD. And I know that anytime they would think about a woman, they would be panicking and feel so much shame because of these Bible verses, to just that if you think something, it's the same as doing it. And so I did put that in there, but I try not to the character isn't like me. So yeah, but it was very healing to write. It was very fun to write. To put all these random things I've seen people do at church or say at church and just be like, yeah, I'm going to put this in my book now because that was weird. Why did you do that?
I love it. Yeah. And I think we're so afraid of lust and of objectifying people that we're really doing ourselves harm. There's nothing wrong with just saying, I really, really, really want to be, I really want to be in that part of life, where I'm, connecting with someone else and exploring my own sexuality, but also connecting. And we have so much backwards. I did an interview with the guy that runs the Recovering from Religion, Dr. Darrell Ray. Have you ever heard of him?
I think I have, yes.
He's done great work, and a lot of his work is about sexuality. And even as I was asking him questions, he could tell, like, Tim, you're framing it through your old worldview. And he was like, we were tribal people. We lived in big huts where we literally saw other people having sex. We're animals. Do you think monkeys don't see each other having sex? Like, porn is part of life. Porn is part of reality. Like, it's been a very relatively new thing that the species does not see other people having sex. And like, porn is part of our life. It's part of our psyche. And so much of what we do these days is even through current discussions, we try to tear that down. And it's like, I know I'll probably get vilified for saying this, but I have intentionally tried to embrace a lustful, pornographic mindset, not in degrading anybody, but to say, I want to think that's really good. Like, you trust me, you don't want men a whole planet worth of men who say, I'm not turned on anymore. Like, you don't want that. Species will die really quick. You want men to be turned on, and you want that to be a big thing. It doesn't mean you should use each other, objectify each other to the point of being used, but there should be a sense of like, I really like sex and I really like eroticism and I like thinking about it. I say it as someone who hasn't had that in 7 years, but theoretically, I'll say it that way. Theoretically, it's a good thing. And for those who can, you should. It's so healing. And especially I think about they talk about babies with skin to skin, like skin to skin is truly healing. And I feel like I could ask you and talk about so many things with this, but what has been the response? How do people respond to you? And I don't mean the Mormons, I can guess how they respond, but the people that are deconstructing that actually respect you, what's the response been like?
Oh, it's been so cool to see. I've had so many people reach out who have OCD and they were like, thank you. Like, I feel so seen. I hadn't even realized it was showing up in this area of my life. I've had a lot of people, just so many people being like, I can't believe I grew up with so much shame and I felt so seen in this book. And it was so fun to see these characters move past it. and to get past it. And yeah, it's been a really great response. It's been really fun, and I've gotten to connect with a lot of people.
What is your next book? Is it in the same kind of genre, or
Ooh,
is it
yes.
different?
Yes. So I'm working on a romance of a character who's like a side character in my first book. This is a Mormon thing. They will go to Vegas and elope, have sex, get it annulled the next day, and go home. Especially at BYU. And so I'm gonna have some characters who did that, and the annulment didn't go through, and so it's going to be like a Sweet Home Alabama. He shows up and is like, hey, I need you to sign this divorce paper. We've been married for 8 years. And then they're going to reconnect. And then I have a couple more books planned with all characters that show up in this first book, and then their journey. I'm going to go over like lavender marriages in a different one. And yeah, I just have a lot of aspects of Mormonism and purity culture I want to explore.
That's awesome. Well, I think you're doing great work. I love your stuff. And again, anyone that wasn't here at the beginning, there's a bunch of links beneath this video to check out the great work and to see the books there. Can I ask, what was the reason that you picked a pen name for your first couple of books?
Oh, yes. So my legal name right now is a Latino last name. And as an author, I never wanted someone to like pick up my book and put me on like best Latino authors, because that's not who I am. I'm a white woman. And so I didn't want to people to get confused. And so my first book, I used my maiden name for, my mysteries. And then a lot of like my extended family and friends and people who are still Mormon, I wrote 2 YA mysteries. I have one more of those coming out. And I knew they were going to be so offended by these adult romances and talking about how I left the church and talking about sexuality. So I did a different pen name for the romances just to have them in different places. So that this audience is over here and this audience is over there.
So your first ones were under the name Kylee, a witch. Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah.
And that's your maiden name?
Yeah.
I've got to say, pardon it, but it seems a little bit just predictive,
Yeah.
Not that you're a witch, but so many
love it.
It's just funny how that worked. It's like a little bit of a poetic. What is it? I'm trying to think of the word. I'm failing, but you know what I mean.
It's super fun.
Yeah, it's like predictive. Well, if you're okay with it, I wanted to take 5 minutes and just read through the comments.
Yeah,
and then if you could be just thinking through anything we missed that you really went to get to, and also if you could just think of a final word of advice for anyone going through the hardest part of deconstruction. Dragonheart says, hey guys, great to see you. Mark over in the UK, thanks for joining us. Appreciate your time today. Kid loves Satan. Hey, Mark, spell check. Mark says, I'm for the purple elephant sermon. That would have been a refreshing change for the usual lowbrow evangelical, heard it all before nonsense. Yeah, it's for sure. Dragonheart again says, I want to say, through a lot of chaos and confusion and serious volatility lately, mostly from me, y'all have been a serious help. I think I've pissed a lot of groups and people off. This is good. I don't know who you are, so you haven't pissed me off, but we're glad you're here. We're glad you're here, and I hope things calm down for sure. We're so glad to have you here. Let's see here. I did communion once, but I guess I did it backwards. Oh, like the is it supposed to be bread first, then wine? You did wine first, then bread. Is that what you mean? Or something like that, maybe. Tori says, the shame of nudity and sex gives so much power to control people. It's not normal to be ashamed of your own body or embarrassed. Humans have been naked for many, many years in the past. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's just so much damage by us being just inherently from the earliest days ashamed to see a naked body. And in many ways, I think this statement is important to come back to. I've come back to it many times, but when you have too many secrets make you have a double life. When you bring your secrets into the light, they lose their power. Mm-hmm. And it's just, for so many people, it's the idea of, I'm ashamed to look at a naked body. That's in many ways, that's the bare bones basic secret. I'm ashamed. I'm mm-hmm. ashamed to see a pair of breasts or whatever. I'm ashamed. It's so bad, and it's not. It's normal. Susanna in Scotland. Hey, everyone. Good to see everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Got a lot of UK representation today. Tori says, it's crazy how fear can control people so deeply that That is why proper sex education should be put in place. Keeps people, mainly kids, from being taught to be ashamed of their bodies and STIs, etc. Yeah, even sexuality. And again, Kylie, I'm kind of reading through these quickly, but if you do have any that you want to respond to, please jump right in.
Yeah, of course.
Candace says, ironically, I once asked if God was a man and was told he was without gender. I was raised by Southern Baptist parents. That's interesting. I would have expected him to say he's not a man, but he is masculine. He's a father figure, but interesting. Hannah says, I love that you realized all those thoughts were your intuition. I wish everyone that thinks a deity speaks to them realize the same thing. Absolutely. And by the way, Hannah, I believe I had tried to reach out to you a while ago, like a year ago, about doing an interview. You had made some comment on a previous video. If you're still in the chat, if you are interested at all in doing an interview at all, please feel free to reach out. I'm on Facebook. The handle is Harmonic Tim. So please reach out if you're interested. Mark says, you're right, Tim. We get addicted to the idea of Jesus. Yep. Hannah again says, religions were created in eras when superstition reigned. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's just crazy that we think of that as like the highest wisdom, is when people knew almost nothing about almost everything. Mm-hmm. Susanna says, true, Mark, especially when Jesus is described by a charismatic preacher. Yeah. Mark says, it's not even that different. The Christian circles I was in would characterize mental health and neurodivergence as demonization, just as they characterized sexual or gender diversity as a demon. Yeah. Hannah, again, I grew up on Anne of Green Gables too. Yeah. I think a lot of us did. It was a very safe, if you're talking about Christianity or even just secularism, if you want to put your kids in front of something that's, it's not going to have any curse words in it. It's not going to have any sexuality. Anne of Green Gables, they kind of snuck in a kiss at the very end.
Yes. Although you do have to explain the cordial and the getting drunk scene.
Yes. And the fact that, when you look at that show too, Anne is never really ostracized or put in a negative light for being unreligious. She's not anti-religion, but she's unreligious. She never really cares about church. Whereas like, I also grew up in Little House on the Prairie, and they brought Jesus into that quite a bit.
Oh yeah.
Mark says, not just safe in your head, but safe in your body. Good question. Yep. Brittany the Apostate. Brittany was just on the channel just a couple days ago. So Brittany, thank you so much for your interview the other day. Brittany's also from a Latter-day Saints background. So please, anyone that has not watched that, please go to the live section of my channel, not the regular videos, but the live section, and check out Brittany's interview. It just happened. She says, hello, everyone. I'm late, but I relate. I was scared to watch anything my previous faith deemed ungodly. Yeah.
Yes.
And Hannah again says, the roots of purity culture run deep. Oh, not only is that true, but I'd say that's a colossal understatement, and I'll leave it at that. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for so many of us, it's funny. I'll say this real quick for just as a side note. I've said before that I feel bad that a lot of Christians will spend their whole lives never actually really living their life.
Yes.
They will live like where they've never truly, it's like they're in the Matrix and they're stuck in the goo, and they'll never wake up. But in many ways, a lot of us who have escaped Christianity will still, unfortunately, never live a day of our own lives. We have admitted it's mythology and it's toxic, it's irrelevant, but it still is ruling us on the worldview level. The rules are there. We're even healing. We're trying to heal from Christianity in Christian ways. And for a lot of us, it's amazing the depths to which this has gone. And it's a lifelong journey. It's a privilege and an honor to be on it. But you got to be, serious, which I think Hannah's getting to, that this is a lot. You have to dig deeper and deeper and deeper, and it's never really over. But I think you do get sort of like as Christians, we would have said, you get to profounder, deeper levels of your commitment to Christ. You get profounder levels of insight into what the hell's going on inside your head, and when your childhood kind of got stunted and you're sort of frozen as a 6-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
Mark again says, Susanna, sorry, I didn't mean to ignore your comment. Thanks for the affirmation. Just enough, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. I'm glad to be listening to this today instead of being in church. Recovering Southern Baptist agnostic. Glad for Dan McClellan's scholarly take on the Bible. I'm not sure we ever recover from purity culture. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, hopefully a little bit at least. Yes. And Soprano Jesse says, I made it live. Yay, glad to tune in. Thank you so much, Jesse. So glad you're here. And Mark again, I missed the co-regulation of being shown it's okay to be in an embodied way. Yeah, for sure. A lot of us that's probably like deconstruction 101 that we're still working on. Mm-hmm. Brittany again says, my mom lied to me when I was young and told me she didn't kiss anyone until she married my dad. It made me feel so shameful for having kissed or done things with others. Yeah. A lot of us, that was like head and shoulders. I remember as a kid, I went to a Baptist church for a while, and I remember this girl was probably like 14 or 15. She was either voluntarily or forced to come up in front of the church on a Sunday night and tell everybody, confess, hey, I'm pregnant. And, the guy wasn't there, of course, but she confessed it
Of
all. And
course
she had
not.
such a scarlet letter. I mean, the church technically rallied around her and forgave her, etc. But just so much shame of like, it's almost like that idea of like you have a scarlet letter on you and your child is a bastard child. Like we're so cruel. We're so cruel to each other.
Yes.
Leda Hamilton says audiobooks too. Yeah.
Audiobooks are amazing.
Heated Rivalry has been very healing for me. That show is amazing.
Love it. So good.
Brittany again, I'm an ex-Mormon and I really enjoyed Mormon stories when I was first deconstructing. It made me feel like I wasn't alone. Yeah. And
Yes,
I'm hoping
100%.
good things. Hoping good things for John and his cast as they're in the litigation. It's sad stuff.
Pick a lane. Do you want the word or not?
Exactly. And I think a lot of it, they're so ashamed. They're trying to hide their shame. The idea that anybody would expose, pull back the curtain and show who they really are. But
oh yeah,
it's like that. What's that expression? Doth I protest too much? Just enough. Again, I've had many moments of feeling God, but I think that is more about my mind and body being in a meditative state that shifts my experience rather than believing it as evidence of God's presence. Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah,
there's nothing wrong with.
Sorry. I was just gonna say I often saw praying as like practicing mindfulness and being meditative, and I think that's why it was such a great practice.
Yeah, and I definitely want to make sure that I never tell people like that you should not pursue spirituality the way it is good for you. For some people, you're going to be walking your dog on the Rocky Mountains there in Colorado. The mountains are your church, and for someone else, it's playing loud music. Early in the morning as you're driving down the road, watching the sunrise. Whatever it is, find your personal temple and feel at home. And for a lot of us, I think it's arguably connecting to this planet. Getting physically grounded, going outside, touching the grass, whatever it is. But find your way to feel spiritual. I don't think spirituality is actually anything myself. A lot of people disagree, but we feel spiritual, and I don't think there's anything wrong with saying, I need to address that feeling. So yeah. I think it's good. Brittany again says, I agree those feelings are real, but our interpretation of them can be off. I used to think it was God. Now I understand the science and psychology more. Yeah. We're the AI of the animal world, and our consciousness has kind of been a blessing and a curse. Lita says, Brittany, I've been enjoying your Instagram content since your interview. So I was looking at my puppy. It's really cute. I thought she was whimpering, and I thought she was whimpering in like a sad way, but she's in a dream. Have you ever seen a dog dream and they just start making noise like they're dreaming, like they're dreaming of running? I don't know if you heard that, but my dog was whimpering. I thought, oh, is she okay? And she's in a dream. So hopefully she's chasing the squirrel and having fun in her head. Brittany says, my Instagram is a cool place to go back in time and see the transformation. I didn't delete anything from when I was a Mormon. Wow, that's awesome, Brittany.
I'm going to definitely go check you out.
Very cool. Very cool. Hannah, again, good for you, Brittany. Just Enough says, that's brave. I can hardly look back without a full body cringe. Yeah. Yeah, a lot of us. Yeah, I had a website up years ago, and it's no longer up. It hasn't been up for years, but I can go back on archive.com. The old you can see old websites. I'm like, oh my god.
Yep.
I got accused of being obsessed with Jesus Christ, and at the time I was like, yeah, of course I'm obsessed with Christ. But that's the point. But yeah, you see it a little differently now.
Oh yeah.
Kylee, have you heard of Rebecca Biblioteca's book club, the Good Book Club? I just joined and we should read your book.
I haven't heard that she has a book club. I will definitely be reaching out and check out that page.
Cool. Thank you, Brittany. Lita says, I remember that interview, Tim. Yep. Thank you so much. And Hannah, again, good for you, Tim. LOL, another mind-blowing in my life. The Christian me would collapse if she knew a day would come when I would encourage a man to embrace a lustful life. Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of us, even as secular, there's some stuff in secular conversations where, we're so afraid of objectifying someone and so afraid of lust. It's like, we're still addicted to purity culture. There's nothing wrong with saying, I love thinking about bodies and I love thinking about sex. Doesn't mean we need to abuse people or violate boundaries, but it's okay to just say, I love the idea of sex. I love the idea of sexual release. So it's good stuff to think through that. Candace says, I'll go back to this one. Hannah was just looks like fixing some words there from the earlier comment. Candace Love says, I've never thought of porn in that way, but it makes complete sense. Yeah. And obviously we're talking about ethical porn, not porn where people are under duress or forced.
Yes.
Brittany says, I'll have to go back and watch the beginning. Don't forget to like the video. Thanks, Brittany. Matt says, I wasn't raised in purity culture, but I married into it. I had a 30-year front row seat watching my poor wife, now former spouse, wrestle with guilt and shame. Matt, that's hard. That's really hard. Yeah, you want to love people out of it, but for some people, it's really sad. I'm so sorry that happened to her and to you.
Yeah.
Hope you both are healing. Just enough. I'm glad that the Bible gave him the desire to study comparative mythology. It is so interesting to see how humans have created many streams of ideas into mythology, shared in part across populations. Yeah, absolutely. See here, Hannah says, you remembered me. Yeah, I'd still be interested in doing this. Sorry for not getting back. I have chronic health issues that make me unreliable, and I'll often miss out on things I've meant to do. No worries. Yeah, whenever the time is right. Again, this is for Hannah as well as anyone else. If you want to do an interview, the best way is to reach out to me on Facebook at the handle Harmonic Tim, all one word. If for some reason you're not on Facebook, my email address is also underneath this video, HarmonicAtheist@yahoo.com. I prefer Facebook so I can put a face to a name. I'm at any given time talking to anywhere between probably 10 and 50 different people, maybe more, about interviews in the future. So if I can put your face to a name, it helps me a little bit. But yeah, no worries, Hannah. Soprano, Jesse, again, I remember the movement I Kissed Dating Goodbye. Did you know that movement?
I had not heard of that one. No.
Like this is the first time you've heard of it?
Sorry, I hadn't. We didn't have that one growing up, but it's like that you aren't supposed. Is it like what is it? The thing the Duggars do?
Yes, exactly. Okay. Yeah, it's the idea of the your chewed up gum, your rose petal. It's had the petals plucked. Yeah, he starts with the the picture of you're there at your wedding and you're about to kiss your bride, but instead all the other girls you've done stuff with, they stand right there and kind of.
I was told that we were the chewed up gum and the licked cupcake, but
yeah. Yeah. So ironically, the author of that, I'm sure most of you know this, if not all of you, Joshua Harris, he has since deconstructed heavily himself. I don't know if he's deconverted, but he's deconstructed. He's no longer a pastor, and he has apologized for a lot of his stuff, which is great. So he says, anyways, Jesse says, I was trying to not kiss any boyfriends because that was the goal. No dating, no kissing till marriage.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. For so many people too, you realize that once you get married, you're not physically compatible because they're not interested or whatever. A lot of differences there that you could have explored, and it's sad. Just Enough says, maybe I'll pronounce it. Is that supposed to be just enough? Maybe that's the way to pronounce it. Just enough. The scope of our imaginations is a beautiful phrase. How many stories can our magical minds assign to any personal history or experience? Yeah. Soprano Jesse, that song by Hosier, Take Me to Church, was both hot and blasphemous to Christians. Yep. The New Testament tells us we are judged by thoughts, but the Torah never did. I had to concede that lust wasn't sin, neither was polygyny. Even a Messiah was birthed by a prostitute in the book of Judges. Yeah. And again, in the 12 tribes, sons of Israel came from 4 different baby mamas. The men were allowed to sleep around.
Yes.
Yeah, it's some crazy stories. Obviously, the story of Lot and his daughters. It's pretty crazy, the stories in that book. Fortunately, yes. I don't know if a lot of you know this, but a lot of the stories, I hope most of you who follow me know this, but a lot of the stories are star stories. When people say, oh, that story of, Elisha was being mocked for being a bald man, and he calls out the 2 bears and they maul the 42 kids. That's a star story. That's a star story. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, let me reach out to me. I don't want to get too far off track, but this is where you need a primer. If you don't hear the words 2 bears and instantly think Ursa Major and Ursa Minor, you're not there yet. And if you don't think Elijah, the precursor, goes across the sky in a chariot of fire, and the person that comes after him is Elisha, who's described as a bald man. Well, that's the sun and the moon. There's a constellation that has Ursa Major and Ursa Minor that has 42 star couplets. Like these are people that studied the stars. That was their TV. That was their Netflix. They knew the sun and eclipses and star constellations so much better than us. And Jesus did too. When he says, hey, I want you to go and look for the man carrying a water pitcher, he will show you the way to the upper room. If you don't think man with a water pitcher equals Aquarius, there's so much good stuff there. When you can deconstruct and say the Bible's bullshit and then take a break and come back and say it's actually really interesting. They wove some crazy stuff into this stuff. But it's fun to come back to it with a fresh view. And Hannah, again, I need to learn what a star story is. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm interviewing some people soon that will be talking about this again. But yeah, great story. And one of the earliest interviews I did, the Unitarian pastor, what is his name? It's escaping, but he did the book, the Gospel and the Zodiac. Great stuff, talking about how the Gospel of Mark is structured according to the signs of the zodiac in the right order. Amazing stuff. Once you see it, again, it just blows your mind. It makes the Bible a little more fun. It's not a good worldview, but it's still an interesting book of mythology. Soprano Jesse says, "Hell yeah, Tim, the Bible is BS." Yeah, it is. Yeah. And it's fun though to think that, it's like, just like you might read a story of Dionysius. We don't think the story of Dionysius is bullshit. We just think it's just another story.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually when we can get to the point in our deconstruction where we're not as angry at the text and we're just like saying it's just another story, learn from it and have fun. We've come to this here. One last comment here. Hannah says, "I've begun religious stories, starting with reading the Bible as an atheist, and it's incredible. I ever believed it." Yeah. It's awesome when you come back to it with a fresh mind. If anyone has a final comment, it takes 60 seconds for me to see it. So if you have a comment that's just popped in, I'm sorry, I don't see it yet. But we're going to give the ball back to Kylee to wrap us up. Kylee, could you give us anything else that you meant to share that we didn't get to yet, and a parting shot of encouragement or advice for someone going through the hard part of deconstruction?
Yeah, I think, yeah, I'm sorry, like all of this Star Story stuff is very fascinating and I want to look into it more. Some words of encouragement I would give for anyone deconstructing, whether it's Mormonism or any other religions, are like, you're not alone. It's okay to trust yourself. Like, you are not the dust of the earth. You're not nothing. And there's a lot of people who have been through it, and hearing their stories, reaching out to others. It's not bad. Like, you can always choose to go back. It's okay to learn about these things. And if you're struggling with purity culture, again, you're not alone. So many people have gone through it, and there's therapists who specialize in it. There's podcasts, there's books, there's resources out there. But I would recommend picking up some romance books because they've shown that it rewires your nervous system.
Can you think of any you could recommend?
Oh my gosh, I love.
No, I meant yours.
I know. Oh, so I wrote "Can I Steal You for Forever?" And it's about a couple who broke up because they had sex, and then all of the shame of it blew up her life. So she had to decide whether to chase her dreams or stay in the good grace of the church. And they run into each other 15 years later. She's a producer on a reality dating show, and then he gets cast as the lead at the last minute. And so it's literally her job to help him fall in love. And yeah, they travel the world.
I should probably ask the question that anyone that's been watching this whole thing and has followed it, that's the kind of book. You're right. How spicy does this get? If one is like, perfectly fine for kids and a 10 is like NC-17, how spicy is this?
This has, I would, if you've read any other books, it's on the same level as like Carly Fortune, Emily Henry. Like, the door is open, we're seeing stuff happen, but it's not quite as explicit as like smut or some of the dark romance goes. So yeah, like you're in the room, but
Gotcha. I like that. Explicit. I mean, there's a place for that for the harder core stuff, but it sounds like your goal is both to have a little bit of that, but also to make people think. This isn't just something that to get your hormones jumping around. Yeah. That's good. Well, I appreciate everybody. Again, thank you so much. Looks like we got a couple quick comments. I'll read these and then we'll wrap up. Just Enough says, "I still carry the myth that I'm worthless if I am not in sacrificial service to others from my childhood church, still deconstructing." Yeah, I can definitely.
Yes, I've struggled with that so much and had to I've talked about it a lot in therapy. I'm just like, I don't serve people all day every day anymore, and it's okay.
Yeah, it's so hard. And I think you mentioned the OCD a lot, and that hyper vigilance and all that. It's just, I still struggle with watching a TV show more than 5 minutes because I used to think to myself, you should be about the Lord's work. As a teenager especially, I was upset that my family would watch 6 hours of football, American football, on a Sunday.
Yeah.
I was like, what are we doing? We're wasting our entire Sunday in front of the TV. And I would literally keep myself to a much shorter time frame often. And I still, to this day, if I watch more than 5 minutes, I'm like, what? You should be probably doing something else.
Yeah.
I've been an atheist for 6 years. I still struggle with it. We all
That's hard.
have to pull those roots up. Hannah says, it's okay to trust yourself. You're not the dust of the earth. You're not nothing. Well said, Kylee.
Thanks.
Absolutely. Brittany, I still struggle with that. Yep. Oh, well, I never knew those star stories in the Bible. Yeah, it's amazing. Great stuff. And by the way, if anyone wants to dig in deeper as well, you all know I've highly recommended hundreds of times the YouTube channel Myth Vision. Derek Lambert does great work there. But there's a lot of guests that Derek has, scholars, PhD level people that know their stuff, that have touched on this. Some of them disagree. Some of them say, no, there's not that many star stories, or that they're not that important. I would disagree and say star stories are at the core of most of the Bible. But whatever you think, if you want to investigate them, Derek got some great interviews. Again, Myth Vision podcast. Just enough. Yep. Hearts. And Hannah, you get the final word here. Same. I always felt guilty for doing fun things because I wasn't witnessing or doing things for God. And yeah, even in deconstructing 10 years later, I still struggle with that. Yeah. Well, for everyone that's talked about some of these struggles, I think we would just say, feel a big hug from us. We care about you, and we're so sorry for some of the pain, but we're so glad that at least you escaped. That's the big picture. You started it. You've got a true hope, and we hope good things for you. But Kylee, thank you so much. It's been great to meet you. Definitely, we'll be looking at your channel, looking for your next books. But please keep up the great work. It's so good to hear from you. And thanks again for your time today.
Yeah, thank you so much. I've learned a lot today. I have so many new things to look into, and it was really great chatting with you.
Yeah, likewise. And just hang on 1 second after we wrap up, but I'm going to end the stream here in a second. I'll say to everybody in the community, thank you all so much for being a part of our lives and letting us be a part of yours. And we'll be in touch soon. Have a great day.
Bye.